Hey everyone, welcome to the World of Tanks 9.5 test server, which today, the day I'm recording, the test server has just gone up, and so I'm going to bring you guys as many videos as I can today. That you've probably already seen a few about some of the new maps and stuff like that, and a few other silly little things. But here we are in the British tech tree here in the 9.5 test server, because they've added a new line of British tanks, and you may, if you're familiar with the British tanks, have already noticed which ones are new, and maybe you know them better than I do, because I've only done the FV 215B 183 line so far, and you can kind of see how I got there from the medium, followed up to the gun carrier, and right over there. So that's about all I know about this line. I also own the TOG, but anyway, I don't really like that anyway. Anyway, did I say anyway enough? We're gonna start looking at all these tanks, and just keep in mind that a lot of the things they've done for the British line are not final. There's a lot of placeholders, and by that I mean the order of tanks might not be finalized. Their loadouts certainly aren't. I think there's a few areas where there's guns with and various modules with the same stats between the two. This isn't, I don't think, a good example, but yeah, it's not a good example. But there is a few places like that where the guns and the various modules might not be their most upgraded version. Anyway, let's get looking at the tanks here. We'll start out with this line here, at the M2, and as you can see, a lot of these tanks are kind of, I don't want to say captured, but British redesigns or remarked versions of US vehicles. I'm not sure what the perfect term is there, but you can see that this does look rather familiar, and I apologize if I either miss a new vehicle or if I look at one that has already existed, because as I said, I'm not the most familiar with the British tanks at all. We're going to very quickly look at the guns that are available on these things, not necessarily anything else. If you want to see anything else, actually you won't even look at the gun on all of them, but if you want to see anything else, all the stats are on the right side there. Hopefully you can see them. There's not a whole lot I can do about that. So there's the first one, and heading on over, I believe we have the Stuart. Yes, we do. And so you can see the Stuart there. Not a whole lot of difference even. That's not the, yeah, that's the Stuart. Not a whole lot of appearance difference there, as opposed to the Cruiser Mark 1. Oh, the M2. M2 is where I was at. So not a whole lot of appearance difference. I confused myself. And next up, keep doing this just so I don't get myself more mixed up than I already was. We have the Grant, which is an M3 Lee lookalike. So if you didn't like the M3 Lee, well, guess what? You can play it again. So have fun with that one. I believe this is a medium tank here. So I'm not sure how it compares to the actual American M3 Lee. I did play that myself, the M3 Lee, and I recently bought it back, but I haven't played it much since then. But it was my first Tier 4 tank, and it was okay, I guess. But I'm not sure how its stats compare against the American one. As far as it looks goes, it's similar. There's a few things different. And by the way, all these tanks that I'm showing you, they all have the top upgraded modules. And in case you're wondering on this, it is this gun here that actually does the firing. The other one does not, on top there, do anything. It's just there to look pretty, you know. And so next up we have the Sherman 3. And this is an interesting remake. There's already so many Shermans. There's recently the Fury added. That's a Sherman. There's the E2 and the E8, and there's also an E4, which is some premium one from way back when, I think from being a closed beta or something. And then of course there's the regular M4 Sherman. So what's that, 5 now Shermans? I didn't really count when I listed them off there. But this one looks kind of nice. I like how there's so many machine gun ports just kind of slammed into the front. And it definitely looks like it's been through a battle, shell craters and so on. And once again, this is an upgraded vehicle. It looks like it is possibly in HD. I know they've made some changes into what they're doing for HD. They're not going to have super high-res textures because they decided that it was some crazy huge file size to have all the tanks in the game, hundreds of tanks, in like the crystal clear HD. But they claim that the ones they're going to be making in HD now still are a higher resolution than those in War Thunder, in case you're wondering. Not to hate on War Thunder, because that's its own game in its own way too. This thing, the Sherman Firefly. Oh look, there's another Sherman. Does that make 6 Shermans? And it definitely looks like it's. You can definitely see the resemblance. It's very interesting. It's almost like someone remolded the front of it by hand at first glance. that's very neat, and it has the I believe that's a 16-pounder or 17-pounder gun on the front. That was a guess from what I had seen in an ASAP video. It's hard to know exactly what they changed in this version because at the time of recording this video, there has been no notice anywhere of exactly what details have been changed in this version. There's just the short ASAP video and what I've seen on For the Record, FTR, ftr.wot-news.com, I believe. I'll put a link in the description for that if I remember. If I forget, remind me. And I'll also put a link to the World for Wargaming's ASAP video, which tells you a little bit about 9.5 update, but not a whole lot. Alright, next up we have... Well, we're done the medium line there, so we're going to skip down to the light, and it eventually evolves into the tank destroyer line. Now, I know there was a cruiser before. I'm not sure if it was the cruiser 1 or the cruiser 2, so we won't look at either of them very long. I didn't play any of them, and I haven't really paid attention much because I don't play around at that tier a whole lot either. Usually I'm on the higher half of the tiers and don't really go much below tier 5. That looks familiar, but it's hard to say because, again, same reasons I just mentioned. In the Cruiser 2 here. Alright, and we'll move on to the slowly getting more interesting vehicles. Valentine has been in there before too, so maybe all three of these vehicles already existed in the game. I'm not sure, but the one that really caught my attention this patch, for not a good reason, was the Archer. I'll show you why. Alright, so let's go down to the stats. 360 health points. It's tier 5, by the way. Tier 5 tank destroyer. Weight, okay. Engine power, okay. Top speed, what? 12? When I first saw that, I'm like, wait, is there a light in the background hiding another number or something? Nope, top speed 12 kilometers per hour. We tested this. I have or / will be putting up another video very, very soon tonight, comparing this thing to the T-95, the tier 9 American tank destroyer, which also has a top speed of 12. So we put them to a race on flat ground in Himmelsdorf and decided to see which one would win the race. I'll let you watch that video if you want to see the result of that. I'll put the link in the description for that one as well. And again, if I forget, remind me, and I will do it. Although this is more has a higher traverse speed, so you can kind of stay behind the T-95 if you're a good driver with this. Its turret does not turn all the way around, by the way. It only turns probably less than 45 degrees in each direction. Hull armor is 20 millimeters, so unlike the T-95, which has 305 millimeters of frontal armor, this thing has 20. So you not only are you as slow as a T-95, but you're not necessarily small either. You're not huge, but you're not necessarily a small tank. And you have no armor, so have fun with that, guys. You don't have a huge amount of hit points either. It does have a decent rate of fire and an okay gun by the looks of it, but hopefully they'll change something about that, because at the moment, this thing seems like it might be a little underpowered. But if you do have to grind through this, then I would go ahead and maybe find a bush at the back of the battlefield, at the back of the line, out of view range of enemy tanks, and hopefully shoot without being shot back. Hopefully you understand bush mechanics for this, because for the new players of World of Tanks, this is going to be a nightmare. So next up we have the Achilles. Oh yeah, Achilles. I thought I skipped one. Again, a very familiar looking tank. You might recognize this from the Wolverine, which is Wolverine's right here. You can see that was very similar. That's the tier 5 American, and this next one here, the Achilles, is the tier 6. So they look very similar, and their performance there, I didn't really look too closely. You can rewind the video and watch that if you want to see all the stats side by side. But looking at the armor, I don't think that this is really any better. Rate of fire, hopefully it has a better gun, because that's the one thing that'll really give it that advantage. But I don't think it has enough armor to really compete too well. And yeah, I wasn't a huge fan of the American one anyway. I love the Jackson, but I don't really like this thing too much. Alright, and we have the Challenger, the tier 7 tank destroyer. This is the upgraded turret. That's so funny. It's almost like it's wearing a hat. What is the purpose of that? Just to give the crew and the gun more room, I guess? What's the next turret down look like? Alright, it's different, but not incredibly different. It looks like you can mount the upgraded gun with that turret, though, if you wanted to for whatever reason. which you might actually want to, because look at the amount of armor the stock turret has, 101 millimeters compared to this the upgraded one, which has 50 millimeters. Although you're losing out on some traverse speeds and view range there, and also 60 hit points. You can see the hit points in the top right there. They change when I change the turret. So yeah, you do miss out on some hit points. You might want the upgraded one there, given the thing has 88 millimeters of hull armor as well at tier 7. And being at tier 7, that the few extra millimeters of turret armor aren't really going to do you any good in the first place. So yeah, I'd go with the upgraded turret, even though it might not look better at first glance. But again, a beautiful tank. It looks kind of a long tank, doesn't it? It looks longer compared to, say, the Achilles. Well, not a whole lot. I guess it just kind of got a low profile in the back. It reminds me of a pickup truck for some reason. But again, nice tank. Looks good. And then we have the Charioteer. I assume that's how it's pronounced. At tier 8. A little over 1,000 hit points. One turret. Again, these modules might change, so I wouldn't start writing down numbers and doing the math and figuring out which one you want the most yet. Even as far as the research points and their cost, that'll probably all change and stuff like that too. But the top gun's 105 millimeter, and then it's got a 20 pounder beneath it there. What's the damage and the rate of fire? It looks like, if you like your rate of fire, you might want to go with the middle gun there if they end up keeping it like that. But otherwise, the 105 is probably going to be your best bet in most situations. And this line gets very interesting when we get to tier 10. So if you're kind of wondering, like, oh, these tanks aren't these tanks aren't too special, just stick around and wait. So now we have here. Wow, I'm losing my ability to talk. At tier 9, the FE 4004 Conway. Well, alright, so this 1,500 health points, not bad. Engine power and top speed seem decent. It seems like it's a fairly mobile vehicle at first glance. Its armor, again, nothing too special. You might get some lucky ricochets or something like that, but not many of them. That is a pretty good sloping on the front armor there, but I imagine if you have other tier 9, and especially tier 10 shooting at you, you're not going to bounce much. And I don't think it'll be... It might be okay for side scraping, but I don't know how great it'll be given that it only has 50 millimeters. But those side skirts will give it an advantage for sure. But now things get interesting. Now, before we had the FE215B 183, which I'm going to talk about briefly just because, well, it has some changes made to it. As far as we can tell, you can see it has 254 millimeters of armor, of turret armor. And you might be thinking, well, that didn't change at all from the current server, even though they said it got an armor buff, which this tank did. But it might not show it in the stats right there. But what you don't know about this tank, maybe, is that only beneath the turret, or sorry, beneath the gun here, has 254 millimeters of armor. And the sides of the turret cheeks here, they had something like 100, 110, 120 millimeters of armor, somewhere around there. I can't remember the exact number. Now they have significantly more than that, as in something like 50 millimeters more. I can't remember the exact number. And possibly this front plate was weakened, but everything else on the turret, except for that lower plate, basically was given more armor. So it's definitely slower too, though, because they kick the traverse speed from 32 degrees per second to 24. Pretty sure I have that right because this is one of my favorite tanks. So this is the first thing I checked out when I heard they were changing something about it. So more turret armor, possibly, but not confirmed to be less hull armor. And its traverse speed's lower, and it seems like it has more ground resistance from what I've seen driving it just a few times here so far, but it's really hard to tell. So we will see when the actual stats come up for this tank, when the test server nodes are released, and what happens to it over a few iterations before the actual 9.5 client is released to basically everybody. Now, let's go on to the big boy. This thing is huge, and it has very little armor, 76 millimeters of hull armor, 14 millimeters of turret armor. You're not going to bounce much from that. You're not going to bounce much, if anything, from the hull armor, even given its slope at tier 10, let alone the 14 mils of turret armor. 14 millimeters of turret armor. Maybe if you get like the super most extreme angling and somebody hits you there, it might be an automatic ricochet, but I wouldn't count on it. And I can't read what that plaque says. I've tried in game 2 when I can zoom right up to it. But oh man, this thing is silly. So what we did, we're not sure about the reload time on this. On paper, let's see what it says on paper here. Rate of fire 2.22. Rate of fire 2. However, I'm not sure if this includes crew skills and module training and stuff like module training. That's not even a thing. 2 to 2.22 rounds per minute. 2 to 2.22. Okay, so they have the same rate of fire. So roughly with both of these, you have about a 30-35 second reload when you first get it if you have 50% crew and no modules, no equipment, whatever I'm trying to say to get the reload time down. However, with the 183 here, given that I have brothers in arms and I have the vents and I have a gun rammer, I have got the reload down to 24.7 something seconds. So it's down almost 10 seconds from what it first was, and I imagine you can do the exact same with this, down to the 2 rounds per minute maximum possible. So I would do that for sure if you get this. Get brothers in arms or at least a gun rammer or something. Get it down to the 24 point something, the 2 rounds per minute rate of fire right away. That's the first thing I would do, because that makes a huge difference when it's almost 10 seconds between each shot difference. But this thing, compared to the 183, I also have a video that is up / will be up within the next couple hours tonight of this thing versus the 183 in a 1 versus 1, and I won't tell you who will win, but I will tell you that they definitely do have different usages, and it's hard to get a good comparison too when you have different players of different skill levels, statistically anyway, facing each other, and there's so many variables, and who fires the first shot, and it's who penetrates. But the way this thing's HESH rounds work, it's the same penetration, same ammunition type, same damage, same everything between the two guns, as far as I can tell. But this thing feasts on anything with minimal amounts of armor, such as the 4005 here at tier 10, which has very little armor. It can actually be a one-shot at 1850 hit points, which isn't that many, especially considering the 183 here has 2000, which mostly safely gets out of the range of being one-shotted by something like this. But anyways, guys, I hope you enjoyed. I believe that's it. As far as I know, that's all the tanks that were added, aside from super test tanks, but I of course can't test those out. So there's one last look at the British line, and it sounds like there's more changes coming. It sounds like eventually they want to change out the tier 10 medium and the tier 10 heavy, from what I've heard, with something else. But we will see. We will see. So hopefully you guys are looking forward to trying out the American tanks. If you haven't done the American line already, then I don't know which one I would choose. But my personal preference for what I've seen would be to go for the 183 up here as opposed to the 4005. But hop onto the test server, check it out yourself. You can do that just by going over to worldoftanks.com or .eu or wherever you are, and they will have a download link soon, hopefully, for the test server. And if they have that posted by the time I put this video up, then I will include a link. If not, you'll have to figure it out yourself. Just check out the World of Tanks news and launcher every time you open the game, and eventually they will have the 9.5 test server change log and stuff like that there, and you can check all the stuff out for yourself. But anyways, guys, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye. Oh, and also what I said I would do is I would give you a comparison of how big this thing is compared to other tanks. And, well, here's the 4005. You can see that it lines up with that bar going across in the background of the garage, and you can see approximately how far it sticks out in either direction. Well, here's a T95 in comparison, which is very low, but otherwise a big tank. Doesn't make it look too small. But you also have stuff like the T110E5, which, if you put it side by side with the 4005 here, you can see that there definitely becomes quite the size difference. A very noticeable size difference for sure. One more comparison. We'll compare it to... let's say the M4 Sherman, for example, because that's another tank that I know a lot of people have seen around. It's a big tank. It has a huge turret. It peaks up over top of almost everything. It might be the tallest tank in the game. I can't confirm that, though. I don't know what the current tallest one is to compare it against, and but it's definitely a tall tank. Anyways, guys, see ya. Bye.